Studio 6B in Rockefeller Center hummed with its usual pre-show electricity. The audience had been warmed up, the Roots were in position, and Jimmy Fallon bounced onto the stage with that signature enthusiasm that had made him America's favorite late-night host for over a decade. The cameras rolled. The band played. Everything was perfect. It wouldn't stay that way. What was meant to be a routine promotional appearance, a friendly chat with a royal, would transform into something no one in that studio could have predicted. In 30 seconds, Prince Harry had found a way to break through 12 years of carefully constructed warmth. And when Jimmy Fallon stopped smiling, you know something extraordinary has happened. Prince Harry walked onto the stage to applause. Jimmy greeted him with genuine warmth, the kind of welcome he'd extended to thousands of guests before. Presidents, movie stars, athletes, ordinary people with extraordinary stories. Jimmy had made them all feel comfortable, loved, welcomed. It was his gift. It was his brand. But from the moment Harry sat down, something felt different. The first crack appeared with a simple question about security. Jimmy made a gentle joke about royal protection. Nothing harsh, nothing mean, just the playful jab he gives every guest to break the ice. Harry didn't laugh. Harry didn't play along. Harry said something back that made the studio go cold. Jimmy, ever the professional, kept going. He asked another question, still friendly, still giving Harry every chance to recover. Harry's response was worse. Condescending. Dismissive. Like he was explaining something to a child who couldn't possibly understand the complexities of royal life. Questlove looked at Tarek. Tarek looked at the floor. The audience shifted in their seats. Something was happening on that stage that had never happened before. So, big news, Jimmy began, his smile still firmly in place. The security review reports say you might get government protection back in the UK. That's huge, right? Harry's expression flickered. It's an ongoing process. Jimmy pressed forward with what he thought was an innocent follow-up. But if it goes through, you could visit more easily, see your dad, maybe even bring the kids to meet their grandfather properly. Security arrangements are complex, sure, but the human part isn't. Your dad's 77. Time matters. If the security gets sorted, is that the plan? More visits. Harry shifted in his chair. I prefer not to speculate about future arrangements. It's not speculation, it's hope, Jimmy said, his tone still light. Don't you hope to see your father more? A pause. The kind of pause that goes on slightly too long. The kind of pause that fills a room with something uncomfortable. I hope for many things, Harry finally replied. Jimmy's smile stayed in place, but his eyes had registered something. That's a very diplomatic non-answer. You should run for office. The audience laughed, grateful for the release. Harry didn't. Jimmy tried again. He was a master at this, steering conversations away from rocky terrain, finding the human moment, making his guests look good. He'd built an entire career on it. But Harry wasn't cooperating. The court case, Jimmy continued, keeping his tone bright. 6 weeks against the Daily Mail. That's a long time to be in London. Your family's there. Your brother's there. Any chance of a coffee? A quick, hey, how's it going with William? My focus is on the legal proceedings, Harry said flatly. Completely get that. But London's not that big. You could accidentally bump into him. I accidentally bump into people I'm avoiding all the time. It's New York. It happens. The audience chuckled. Harry's expression remained stone. My brother and I have different schedules. Yeah, I noticed, Jimmy said, the warmth in his voice beginning to fade slightly. When you were in London for the last hearing, William and Kate went to Scotland. Your dad went to Scotland, too. That's a lot of Scotland for 1 week. Almost like they planned it. Harry's jaw tightened. Royal schedules are set months in advance. Are they? Because the timing was pretty specific. You arrive, they leave. You leave, they return. It's like a royal game of tag, except nobody wants to be it. The audience laughed nervously. They could feel the temperature changing. The Roots shifted uncomfortably. Questlove exchanged a look with Tarek. This wasn't the show they'd rehearsed. I don't control other people's calendars, Harry said. No, but you could pick up a phone, Jimmy replied, his voice still measured but carrying an edge now. Phones work in both directions. Have you tried calling? Not through staff. Actually calling. Harry's voice dropped. Family communications are private. You wrote a book about family communications, Jimmy said. 300 pages of private conversations. The privacy ship has sailed, my friend. The studio had gone very quiet. The usual late-night energy had been replaced by something else entirely. A tension so thick you could feel it pressing against your skin. Jimmy's usual warmth had been replaced by something raw and genuine. Harry was visibly uncomfortable. Let's talk about something fun, Jimmy said, attempting to lighten the mood once more. The kids. Archie's 6 now, Lilibet's 4. What are they into? Every dad loves talking about their kids. Harry's posture softened marginally. They're discovering their interests. Like what? My daughters are into everything. Crafts, sports, making messes I have to clean up. What messes do your kids make? We value their privacy. I'm asking about hobbies, not home addresses, Jimmy said, his frustration beginning to show. Does Archie like dinosaurs? Most 6-year-old boys love dinosaurs. There's a whole phase. He has varied interests, such as silence. You can't name one thing your son is interested in? Jimmy asked, genuinely incredulous now. Not one specific thing? I can name many things. I choose not to share them publicly. Jimmy tilted his head. You shared a video of them singing Happy Anniversary. That was public. You've done photo shoots, professional ones. The privacy seems selective. I decide what to share. You decide to share things that help your image, Jimmy said, the kid gloves finally coming off. And withhold things that might make you seem normal, relatable, like a regular dad who knows his kid likes dinosaurs. Harry's face had gone red. I'm not a regular dad. Clearly not, Jimmy shot back. Regular dads can talk about their kids without treating it like a state secret. Jimmy shifted gears, but he didn't back down. The Netflix project. No Way Out. Afghanistan, British soldiers under siege. Why this story? It deserves to be told, Harry said. The heroism. The timing, though, Jimmy pressed. Announced after Trump's NATO comments about allies not pulling their weight. Coincidence. Development takes years. Announcement takes seconds. You could have announced any time. You announced when it would seem like a response to Trump. That's strategic, not coincidental. Harry's expression hardened. I served in Afghanistan. I have standing to tell these stories. You do, Jimmy acknowledged. Nobody questions your service. 2 tours, genuine. But the project isn't about your service. It's about other soldiers' experiences. How much of it is their story, and how much is your brand attached to their story? I'm amplifying voices that need amplifying. Are you? Jimmy asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Or are you borrowing credibility from soldiers who actually experienced what you're depicting? There's a difference between amplifying and appropriating. The audience had gone completely silent. The Roots hadn't played a note in several minutes. The energy in Studio 6B had transformed entirely. I resent that implication, Harry said. I'm not implying, Jimmy replied. I'm asking. Direct questions deserve direct answers. Who benefits more from this project? The soldiers whose story it is, or you? Jimmy wasn't finished. The staff situation, he said, not allowing space for recovery. Your communications team. How many directors in the past few years? 5? 6. Staff transitions happen in every organization. At that rate, Jimmy laughed, but there was no humor in it. I've had the same producer for 12 years. The Roots have been with me since day one. Loyalty tends to stick around when environments are healthy. Different organizations have different dynamics. Your organization has consistent turnover, Jimmy pressed. Anonymous reports describe difficult conditions, crying staff, impossible demands. Either everyone's lying, or something's actually happening. Harry stood up slightly, then caught himself. Anonymous sources are unreliable. Anonymous sources are protected sources, Jimmy countered. People who'd face retaliation if they spoke publicly. The anonymity suggests fear, not fabrication. I won't respond to gossip. It's not gossip when multiple outlets report similar patterns from independent sources, Jimmy said. That's called corroboration. Journalism 101. Harry grabbed his water glass, took a long sip, set it down with visible force. This interview has become something other than what was agreed. What was agreed was an interview, Jimmy said. Interviews include questions. You seem to have expected a commercial. The studio had gone completely silent. You could hear a breath held too long. Jimmy's usual warmth had been replaced by something raw and genuine. Something the audience had never seen before. Your father tried to see you, Jimmy said, his voice quieter now. When he was in New York for the UN, reports said he wanted a private meeting. You declined. The timing didn't work. The timing was him making time, Jimmy said. He's the king. His schedule is insane. He carved out space for you. You said no. There were security concerns. There are always security concerns, Jimmy replied. At some point, security becomes an excuse rather than a reason. You wanted government protection to visit the UK. He was in your city. No Atlantic Ocean, no logistics, just a car ride. What was the actual reason? Harry's voice had dropped to something cold. I don't owe you explanations about my father. You don't owe me anything, Jimmy said, something shifting in his eyes. But you owe yourself honesty about why you keep finding reasons not to see him. He's 77 years old. How many more chances do you think you'll get? That's manipulative. That's reality, Jimmy said, his voice thick with emotion. My father's gone. I'd give anything for another conversation. You have a father who's actively trying to reach you, and you're treating it like an inconvenience. That's not something I can joke about. Harry stared at him. The silence stretched. Jimmy held his gaze. What do you actually want, Harry? Jimmy asked. Seriously, not talking points. What's the endgame? Harry's jaw tightened. I want accountability. From whom? For what? Specifically. For what they did to my wife, to my mother, to me. What specifically did they do to you? Jimmy asked. You grew up in palaces. You had education, opportunity, platform. You served your country with their support. What was done to you? You don't understand the constraints. I understand constraints, Jimmy said. I've worked in television for 25 years. Constraints are everywhere. Most people don't burn down their families over them. I didn't burn down anything. You published a book detailing private family conversations, Jimmy said, his voice rising slightly. You did interviews accusing them of racism. You produced documentaries about their failures. If that's not burning down, what would you call it? Harry stood up fully. I'm not going to sit here and justify my life to a talk show host. Jimmy stood too, but slowly, deliberately. I'm not asking you to justify your life. I'm asking you to participate in a conversation without treating every question as an attack. I've asked about your father, your brother, your kids, your projects, basic topics. You've blocked all of them. Your questions have been hostile. My questions have been curious, Jimmy corrected. Hostile would be insults. I've asked for specifics, for explanations, for anything beyond talking points. You've given me walls. Because the questions are designed to make me look bad. The questions are designed to understand you, Jimmy said. The answers are what make you look bad. I'm not doing this. You are, Jimmy said quietly. Harry grabbed his jacket from the back of the chair. This was a mistake. The mistake was thinking you could come on a show, give rehearsed non-answers, and leave with your narrative intact, Jimmy said. That works with friendly interviewers. I'm friendly, but I'm not a prop for your PR machine. Harry moved toward the stage exit. You've changed, Jimmy. This isn't the show I expected. I've been doing this for 12 years, Jimmy said, his voice carrying across the silent studio. I've interviewed thousands of people. Presidents, celebrities, athletes, regular people with extraordinary stories. Almost all of them could engage in conversation, could laugh at themselves, could answer simple questions about their lives. He paused. You couldn't tell me one thing your son likes, Jimmy said. Couldn't explain why you won't see your father. Couldn't discuss your project without getting defensive. In 12 years, you're the first guest who made me feel like I was talking to a press release instead of a person. Harry paused at the edge of the stage. I am a person. I've been through more than you could imagine. I don't doubt that, Jimmy replied. But trauma isn't a substitute for personality. Suffering doesn't exempt you from being present in conversations. Every question I asked was an invitation to show me who you actually are. You declined every single one. Harry left. The studio door closed behind him. Jimmy stood alone on stage for a long moment. The audience didn't know whether to applaud or sit in stunned silence. The Roots looked at each other, instruments untouched. Well, Jimmy finally said, turning to the camera, that's never happened before. He walked back to his desk slowly, settling into his chair with none of his usual bounce. He rubbed his face with both hands. The cameras stayed on him. The audience waited. I want to talk about what just occurred, he said, because I think it matters. He looked directly into the camera. I've built this show on making people comfortable, on fun, and games and laughs, and moments that make you feel good. That's who I am. That's who I want to be. But sometimes, a guest shows you something that you can't just laugh off. He paused. I asked Prince Harry about his kids, Jimmy continued. He couldn't name one thing his son enjoys. I asked about his father. He treated a 77-year-old man's attempt to reconnect as inconvenient scheduling. I asked about his project. He got defensive about timing questions. I asked about his staff. He dismissed documented patterns as gossip. Jimmy shook his head. I don't know what I expected. Maybe the Harry from 10 years ago, the one who seemed genuine, who could laugh at himself, who felt like a regular person trapped in an extraordinary situation. That person didn't show up tonight. What showed up was, I don't know, a press release with legs. Questlove finally spoke from behind his drums. That was intense, man. Yeah, Jimmy said. It was. He rubbed his face again. I don't like being that guy. I really don't. But at some point, you have to acknowledge when someone's not meeting you halfway. When they're treating conversation as performance and interviewers as props. He looked at the audience. You saw what I saw. I offered him dozens of chances. Easy questions. Playful setups. Ways to connect, to be human, to show something real. He blocked every single one. That's not my fault. That's not me being mean. That's him choosing walls over windows. Tarek leaned into his microphone. You asked about his son liking dinosaurs. That's literally the easiest question possible, right? What 6-year-old boy doesn't like something? Dinosaurs, trucks, superheroes. Pick one. He couldn't do it, Jimmy said. Or wouldn't. I'm not sure which is worse. The footage aired that night. NBC made no edits. The clips that spread across social media captured the transformation of late night's nicest host. You wrote a book about family communications. The privacy ship has sailed, my friend. You can't name one thing your son is interested in. You borrowed credibility from soldiers who actually experienced what you're depicting. Trauma isn't a substitute for personality. What showed up was a press release with legs. Millions of people watched, and they couldn't look away. Harry's team released a statement calling the appearance an ambush that violated the agreed promotional format. Jimmy addressed it the following night with something approaching sadness. Ambush? He asked the camera. I asked about his security review, his family, his kids, and his Netflix project. For topics, all publicly known. The ambush he's describing is simply follow-up questions. Questions that expected more than talking points. If follow-up questions feel like ambush, maybe examine what you're defending. He paused, then added, I wanted to like him. I really did. I remember the Harry who played beer pong, who seemed real, who could laugh. That Harry didn't show up. Maybe he doesn't exist anymore. Maybe the walls got too high for even him to climb. I don't know, Jimmy said quietly. But whatever happened to him last night showed me someone lost inside a fortress of grievance. I hope he finds his way out. I just couldn't help him do it. For Jimmy Fallon, the interview became an unexpected turning point. Proof that even the most welcoming host has limits. Proof that 12 years of making everyone comfortable hadn't erased his ability to recognize when comfort was being exploited. For Prince Harry, it was devastating in a way other interviews hadn't been. This wasn't a hostile commentator or a confrontational journalist. This was Jimmy Fallon, the man famous for laughing too hard at his own sketches, for making every guest feel like a friend. If Harry couldn't handle Jimmy Fallon, who could he handle? But for the millions who watched, something else emerged entirely. The contrast between what Jimmy offered, genuine warmth, playful questions, repeated chances for connection, and what Harry returned, defensiveness, deflection, eventual departure, told its own story. Jimmy had extended hand after hand. Harry had slapped away everyone. And in that slapping away, in that refusal to meet warmth with warmth, everything anyone needed to know about Prince Harry's capacity for genuine human connection became painfully clear. Some people rise to kindness. Others treat it as weakness to exploit. Eventually, even the nicest person in the room stops trying. Jimmy Fallon, the nicest man in late night, and even he couldn't get through. What does that tell you? The audience sat frozen long after the cameras stopped rolling. The Roots packed their instruments in silence. The production staff moved through the motions of wrapping the show. But something had shifted in Studio 6B that night. Something that would ripple through the cultural conversation for weeks to come. Jimmy sat alone in his dressing room, staring at the monitors. The playback showed the interview in its entirety. He watched himself push, watched Harry deflect, watched the walls go up in real time. He'd asked the questions everyone wanted to ask, but no one had the nerve to say. Not because he was cruel. Not because he was combative. But because he genuinely believed, naively perhaps, that there was still a person underneath all the armor. What he found instead was a man so lost inside his own narrative that he'd forgotten how to be present. A man who'd turned his pain into a shield so thick that even warmth couldn't penetrate it. A man who'd become exactly what he claimed to be fighting against. An institution, a press release, a brand. Jimmy turned off the monitor. He stood up, straightened his jacket, and walked back out onto the stage. The lights were dim now. The crew was wrapping cables. The audience had gone home. He stood alone in the center of the studio, looking out at the empty seats. "The most important thing I've ever done on this show," he said to no one. And it didn't even feel like a show. In the weeks that followed, the interview became a cultural touchstone. Commentators debated it. Psychologists analyzed it. Late-night hosts weighed in. But perhaps the most telling response came from the ordinary viewers. People who'd never met a royal, never been in a palace, never navigated the complexities of estranged families. They watched the interview and saw something deeply familiar. A person so committed to their own story that they'd lost the ability to hear anyone else's. A person who'd confused trauma with identity. A person who'd wrapped themselves in grievance so tightly that they'd forgotten how to be warm. They saw someone who couldn't name what his son liked. And they wondered, what kind of father doesn't know that? Jimmy never brought up the interview again. He returned to his sketches, his games, his warmth. He made his guests feel comfortable. He made them laugh. He did what he did best. But everyone who'd been in that studio knew something had changed. A line had been crossed. A truth had been spoken. And the nicest man in late night had finally shown the world that kindness has limits. That even the most patient person eventually stops offering hands to someone who only wants to slap them away. Some people rise to kindness. Others treat it as weakness to exploit. But eventually, even the nicest person in the room stops trying. Jimmy Fallon, the nicest man in late night, and even he couldn't get through. What does that tell you?